Love your midlife body? It's not like a pair of broken-in shoes, is it? We tend to find flaws more often than appreciation if we're not consciously working on a positive attitude or mindset. If you struggle with exercise, with weight, or habits that support an optimal weight, then this episode may be just for you. We're talking about a topic women don't talk about regularly amongst themselves. I mean, they don't talk about hating our bodies, right? I mean, we don't talk about that. We pretend on the surface to have it all together, or at least don't share the dirty little secrets that we're vulnerable to negative thoughts. Depending on who we are, we may go to great lengths to cover up the insecurities that we have about our midlife body image. We may pretend it just doesn't matter. Even if you're of a normal weight, even an envied ideal weight, you likely know the feeling of not quite feeling thin enough or fit enough or something enough. I've worked with many women in 38 years. I've been a woman for 58 years. Individually, in groups, online, on the phone, in persons, in the way I've met with women, it doesn't matter how much you weigh or what size you wear. Women all over, of every size and shape, share this universal feeling of not quite being there yet. So this episode is for you and for me and for all of us. It's for every young girl you raised or mentored, and for the ones you raised that you adore, and perhaps even now with wrinkled skin and well-earned deep lines, don't feel strong enough, experienced enough to be there yet. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles and concerns, and most of all, hope to inspire you. I share what to eat, how to move, and how to change your mindset, sometimes about those former two, so that you can have the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve in this second and better half. Can't wait to introduce you to my guest today. Tanya, thanks so much for being here. I can't wait to dive into this topic.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. There are a lot of women listening to us who want to lose weight. Maybe not all lose weight, but get fit, get stronger, be avoiding bone density issues. Why do you think in reaching those kinds of goals or going for them and being in the journey, self-love is so important and potentially missing?
It's a really good question. And the way I see it is we're after all of these things because we're after a feeling. We want to lose the weight, not just because we want to see a number on the scale that's a little bit lower than before, fit into a certain clothing size. That's all part of it. But we want to feel good. We want to feel confident. We want to feel energetic. We want to feel good. I mean, one of the base desires is that we want to feel good in our bodies so that we can go live our life. And what we think is going to happen is that we think by doing the thing, by losing the weight, by sticking to your exercise plan, whatever that is, that self-love, self-acceptance, self-appreciation, body appreciation, whatever you want to call it, respect is going to happen. But it doesn't all the time. Sometimes it does. But sometimes what can happen too is it becomes a contingency where I will love myself only when I'm a certain size, or I will love myself, I'm enough only if I follow my plan to a T. And it becomes this conditional love. We're putting conditions on our relationship with ourselves, and it doesn't create that aspect of safety. And when it comes to the long-term lifestyle, creating the change for life, we want to have that aspect of like, I'm enough, I'm okay, and I want to take care of myself. One of my favorite quotes is that when you love something, you take care of it. If we think about our pets or our children or our house, or if you love your new Apple AirPods or something, you take care of it. So when we love something like ourselves, we're also going to take care of it. So it definitely is going to be helpful and really a prerequisite to getting and feeling the way you want to feel.
Such a great description. Okay. And that might have been the mic drop for today. We
And
don't
done.
we don't just want to lose weight. We want to feel a certain way, and that's potentially what we're chasing. What's some evidence self-love is missing, or if we were putting a glass on the counter and it had self-love in it, that we have room to top it off a little?
Well, awareness is the first step, Deborah. And a lot of people don't even know aware that they're lacking it. Like they're not, because their brain and their stories and their patterns have just always been, putting themselves down, not being enough, criticizing themselves. And until we even have this conversation, so this might be your first step of like thinking about this right now and starting to build awareness and pay attention to your thoughts and your relationship with yourself and get curious. Like, do I appreciate myself? Do I love myself? Do I respect myself? And that's really the first step to seeing if something is going to be needing for you, or if you need to top up that glass, as you said. A really great question when I coach my women on this one, I ask them, like, what does it look like when you don't love yourself? What does it feel like when you don't love yourself? And sometimes it's things like just really berating yourself and putting yourself down. Or sometimes we have this perfectionist type tendency. And most of the women that I work with who struggle with food have a tendency to be a perfectionist, where I'm only enough if I uphold some certain standards for myself. Sometimes self-love and self-acceptance, or lack of, is not setting boundaries for yourself. Sometimes it's also not calling yourself out on your own BS that needs to be called out so that you can take that next step, so you can move into growth. Sometimes lack of self-respect, self-acceptance is not even challenging yourself to overcome some things that might be getting in the way. So for example, we're so scared that we might show up with some imperfections, that we're going to prove ourselves that we're not enough, or et cetera, like that sort of thing, that we don't even look into some of the things that need to be changed. So for example, if you have a pattern that you don't like, you might just ignore it because you want to pretend everything's okay. So that can happen sometimes as well. But for a lot of women, it's just simply not taking care of themselves. It's, and like I said, they have no idea that they're doing it. One of my women that I was working with, she said to me, Tanya, I never knew how much I hated myself until I started working with you. And I wasn't sure if that's a good thing to share or not. But it's really that getting curious with yourself and starting to just explore a little bit and to ask yourself those questions.
Very rich. Okay, while you're talking, I'm going to backpedal a little bit because I had a question. And so many of us, when we end up being experts and coaches in a certain area, have dealt with a certain amount of what it is we're expert in. Has there been any truth for you in that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely right on that too. We teach what we've gone through.
Mm.
For me,
We teach what we need, actually.
We do. And for me, it was years of trying to uphold a standard that was completely unachievable and missing out of my life because I was always trying to be a certain way and try to reach this level of perfection without just ever being okay with myself, who I am. And what really spurred me to change, Deborah, is that I thought about beginning with the end in mind. And I thought on my deathbed, like when I'm saying goodbye to this world, I'm going to look back and just think I wasted so much of my life of not being fully present because I was always criticizing myself. I was always hard on myself. And that just, it actually made me really afraid and really scared and sad that I already wasted so many years of my life doing that. So I really, in that realization, realized that there had to be a different way. And sometimes we also are afraid that self-acceptance, self-love just means like, hey, I'm just going to eat whatever I want, or, life's too short. It doesn't matter. It's not like that at all. there's this balance point where you come at this journey from a place of just really wanting to take care of yourself and giving your body truly what she needs as well.
Love that. Okay. So let me rephrase. So we've gone here, women often having this idea that when they lose weight, they get to a certain weight or they fit into a certain pair of pants, they get to a certain size, look a certain way, that they will also feel a certain thing. Let's unpack what's the journey, if that's where you begin, and what actually happens. What's the evolution for women? I'm sure you've worked with many women and you've seen it go one way, and then there's probably a fork in the road where it's gone another way. Can you unpack that just a little bit more?
Absolutely. So I think what you're asking here is like, what does that actually look like? How do we do this? Not just sort of this theoretical thing of like, I need to love myself. I need to take care of myself. Yeah, it really starts with awareness. And listening to this podcast might be your first part here too. And to really understand that self-compassion, like you might want to call it acceptance, you might want to call it respect, you might want to call it love, appreciation. There's different words for it. Sometimes we might say, well, I actually don't love myself right now. I don't, but you can start with respect. So like I said, right now, just, I think it's really helpful to know also what it's not. Like, it's not complacency. It's not just like, I am going to eat whatever I want, or it doesn't matter because I'm just going to love and accept myself. But it really is a choice. It's a choice. It's a habit. It's something that we do every day. And love is not just a feeling. It is an action. And sometimes when we don't feel like it right away, when we don't feel like we're going to love ourselves or appreciate ourselves, there are things that we can do to start to cultivate that. And it could start with the way that we act. So for example, it could be putting yourself and your own self-care on your priority list every day, doing something for yourself. Sometimes the actual act of self-care or self-love is just taking a moment to just take a few minutes just to breathe and just to be here. It's a lot about also paying attention to the thoughts that you're thinking about yourself. And this is definitely a journey. This is not like a one-time fix at all, but it's starting to pay attention to the things that you might be saying to yourself or the way that you be feeling that are not in alignment with you loving yourself or you taking care of yourself. So examples would be putting other people's needs all the time before yours, or only thinking that you're enough when you hit certain metrics and always pushing yourself to these new standards even though you need rest. Or it could be not setting boundaries, not sometimes calling yourself out in a lovingly way. A lot of women just put themselves down all the time without even being aware of it. And I want to say too that just because you have done this for so many years, which for a lot of women they have, and we think that it's vain to love ourselves, or we criticize other women for being vain for loving on themselves. But rising up and having the courage to take care of yourself and to get on your own side, it takes courage, because to play small, to do the thing that you've always done before, which is putting yourselves down, making yourself small, that story is old. It's boring. And it's really going to take a bit of courage to rise up and to do something different, which is why it's so helpful to do things like listen to this podcast and to surround yourself with other women who are doing the same thing, or who are also deciding that it's time to take care of themselves.
Love it. Let's talk a little bit about external and internal communication. So, running a business, especially an online business where more and more of us have done that in the last couple of years, want to or not, that's how we landed. There's a lot of opportunity to get written feedback. We're hearing feedback from, say, Facebook posts or from our website, and hearing people inside of our groups talk. And every once in a while, there is a theme with some people over and over that although they're expressing something that happened to them, which I think we can both agree that's never wrong, if something strikes them as a negative reaction, it's a negative experience that they had, that's absolutely okay to express. But there's a positive or a negative way to relay that message. So, my question in this very roundabout way is, do you see among the women that you're working with kind of a common denominator that it's not only their internal communication, but often the first sign that they are having like a really tough inner critic is that often they can have a sharper tongue with others as well?
Absolutely. And that's actually one thing that I coach my women on. Is a lot of women also fear judgment. And they're like, well, people are going to judge you, but no one happier or more successful than you is going to criticize you or judge you. It's always the opposite. And it really is a reflection on other people, it's a reflection on you and what's going on inside of you, how you see other people. And sometimes, Deborah, that's a really good point. That's a great place to start. Sometimes when we don't even see our own love or our own beauty for ourselves is to look at it for others and to get out of our own, like out of our own head and out of our own body and start to look for the love and look for the kindness towards other people. That could be a reflection for inside as well. But you're absolutely right that when we're not in a good place, it's going to show up by us, putting other people down a little bit more or being snappy or whatever that's going to look like for you. But it's a really great opportunity for you to be reflective of yourself and see what's going on there as well. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we brought that up. And I think that sometimes you may not be aware, and maybe you don't have a Tanya in your life right now. You should have one, but if she's not right now in your corner because you're just being introduced, if there's been a theme where sometimes people are letting you know, like that hurt, or you're the common denominator when people's feelings get hurt, or when people say, that you're hard to work for. I think if you look at that, not in a judgmental way or feeling badly about it, but as a way to reflect on, if I'm talking externally that way, or that's how it's landing, what am I saying internally to myself so that you can, kind of support your inner child, right? And take a little bit better care of being softer with yourself.
Absolutely. And that's the power too of the self-appreciation and self-respect and this better relationship with ourselves. Because if you're so afraid of not being enough, or your love for yourself is so conditional and just is so vulnerable when to anything else happening or these kind of external feedback, these criticisms, you're not going to do the work to actually get curious with yourself and the openness to actually see what might be going on. And so you might just shut it off, or you might just say, well, they're wrong, you're right, and you're going to keep going as is without really doing that work. I teach a lot about having a curious mindset. And you said it really, really well, but not judging ourselves. And I mean, we're going to judge, I think, in some way. We're going to judge, but we can judge ourselves without necessarily berating ourselves or hating on ourselves. But it's having that curiosity mindset to say, what might be going on, and have that discovery versus just shutting down and saying, like, that's it. I'm like you would if you're. I'm trying to say here, trying to articulate this better, and I feel like my words are not quite coming out. But when we don't have that great relationship with ourselves, we don't have that trusting relationship with ourselves, we're not able to really do that internal work and to find out what might be going on with that curiosity mindset. And it's you miss out on a lot. And with a lot of the women that I work with, I mean, the women I work with have been struggling with their weight and their food and their diet for years. They don't even look at or they have never looked at what's going on inside, because they were not able to do that without judging themselves or being mean to themselves or hating on themselves. Just like when they have slip ups or when they have things that are not going right and they make mistakes or they have process errors or they go off plan or whatever that happens, they just look at it as like, well, I failed. That's it. Versus having that curiosity mindset. So like, no, it's like, what's going on inside that might need to be taken care of so that I can keep going.
Yeah, I really love that. And you did a great job, by the way, of articulating around it. I think that it is harder to talk about intangibles. No matter, what you are, who you are, how long you've done it, it is a difficult thing. And I think that saying it in so many different ways can be really beneficial, because if you are listener, you're here and we say it in one way that may or may not resonate with you. But if we continue to find ways to relay the same message, we may find the thing that, okay, that makes sense to me. One of the ways oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that one way that you can describe this, I think that is for me is the best analogy is if you were working for a boss who was always putting you down, was always criticizing all of your mistakes all the time, always reprimanding you, you're going to do the bare minimum for that person just to not get in trouble. You're not going to want to thrive. You're not going to want to do as well as you can. You're going to quit as soon as you can. So when you have this relationship with yourself where you're always hard on yourself and you're always putting yourself down and you expect like exceptional standards, and if you don't meet that, then you're not enough and you are not going to thrive. All of your actions are going to be fear-based. All your actions are going to be, I need to lose the weight so that I'm enough. I need to eat this way so that I'm okay. Versus like, no, I'm okay as I am and I get to. So it just changes the feeling behind all of the actions as well. Sometimes the actions are still the same. The actions are still like, I'm going to do plan my meals. I'm going to do my workout, but it's based from this place of like, I want to take care of myself because I have this great relationship with myself. Not that I'm doing this because I hate myself and I want to try to hate myself into loving myself. It doesn't work that way. And then from a actual like biological, physical side standpoint, when we're always criticizing ourselves and hating ourselves, it actually puts ourselves in a bit of a stress response. And as you know, being in a stress state is not ideal for fat burning and for just energy and thriving in general. So it's really, just want to add that in as well, just to add one more example of what this looks like and why it's such a worthy goal and to start to change, to start to have the courage to build this better relationship with yourself.
Yeah, phenomenal way for you to describe that. That made really a lot of sense. And it kind of brings me full circle too. I mean, the universe is always talking to you, right? So I've just recently listened to a couple other podcasts and it's like boom, boom. And okay, Tanya, your interview is like number 3. And that's how the universe works. But, looking at, you've said this, doing the work. And I want to just not let that fly by you, listener, that what we're talking about is, similar to if you want to get stronger, you do the physical work, you do the physical workout, and you also do the rest. But doing the inner work is, again, less tangible. So you feel it, but you're not working out 24/7, but you're feeling 24/7. The benefit is far bigger for doing that intangible kind of work. And I think we can shy away from it because it is uncomfortable and depending on how you were raised. So I think it's important too to say, I'm 58. I think anybody who's probably in their 50s and, definitely 60s and 70s. And I know we've got listeners in that age range and we're going to continue to get older, right? Flipping 50. There's only one choice. There's one other choice if you don't. But we were raised by individuals who taught us the value of, hard work, but the kind that you could effort and see, that sweat equity, if you will. And, this inner work is kind of it's a grown up kind of a work in as opposed to a work out. So I encourage you to think about how much do you really do that piece for yourself. I think some exercises lend themselves to it better than others. Those where you feel like you can just be in it in the moment, cruise control. It might be going for a walk for some of you. For others of you who can tolerate higher intensity exercise, it might be a jog or a run. But doing yoga mindfully and or doing meditation or just stretching, other ways that you might be able to combine these things and listen to what are the messages I'm telling myself about this pose. For instance, I find this is true a lot with women who go to yoga and don't think they can or should because their pose doesn't look like the other people's pose, which is like, oh my goodness, we're so far from the tenets of yoga when we feel those things or think them. So I think it's very important to look at, are you willing to do the inner work and reap the rewards that come from that? Tanya, I'm super curious. How did you get started doing this work? And are you catering to primarily midlife women, or are you working with all ages?
That's a really good question. I want to answer it. I want to actually get back to what you just said too about what the inner work looks like. But so yes, I work primarily with women in their 50s and 60s and 70s and beyond. And I love that age range because so much of the programs out there are not catered for women in their 50s and 60s. And when I see the change that's possible, it's just phenomenal. I have women who I start working with them when they're in their 80s and they can transform their relationship with themselves. And they tell me that they wish they found me in their 20s. I'm like, well, I don't know if Google was around when they were 20 years old. But so yes, and I missed actually the very first question you asked if I cater to women over in midlife, and then there was another question right before that I totally blanked.
How did you first come to starting to do this work?
Okay, got it. Thank you. I actually started my career as a fitness professional, and I still do that. I have a personal training studio, but I was working with men and women, from 2004 onwards. And I was all about the plans and the workouts and the diets and all the things. And I realized that there was something really big missing in between all of the great plans and the follow through, or all of the great plans and feeling the way we want to feel. So we do all the things, but we never actually feel the way we want to feel. And if we do all the things, but never get what we actually want, which is that feeling, you're not going to keep it up. Because why would you? Why would you just keep doing the workouts and doing the food plans and doing all the things, taking care of yourself, but you're not actually getting what you're after, which is the feeling. And I really set out to fill that gap. And I thought that what if we were more intentional, not just about the food and the movement and everything, but we were more intentional about actually changing this. So we weren't just hoping that by doing the workouts, by losing the weight, by eating better, that the feeling's just going to come or the mindset's just going to come. But what if we actually did them both separately? And you need to, because hoping that you're going to have this great relationship with yourself, or hoping that you're going to feel a certain way when you've lost the weight, or hoping that your mindset's going to change or your identity is going to change when you lose the weight, there are some people it does happen for, but very few. And if you have been struggling with this cycle of, doing well for a while and then falling off plan, etc., then doing the next plan, doing the next diet isn't going to solve the issue. You got to be more intentional with that. So it's a lot. For me, it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of learning. It was a lot of, some formal coaching, but then most of what I learned and most of what I discovered was by coaching other people in a very, very intimate and personal setting to find out what doesn't work, and then to reinvent some pathways so that we could figure out what does work.
Very rich. Love it. What are you finding now? So you've been doing this for a minute, 2004, and beginning to coach people, what do you find in 2022 about maybe the age or the readiness of people to do this kind of work? Has that changed?
I think it's becoming a lot more prevalent right now. When I first started doing it, I mean, even right now, honestly, Deborah, when I work with my women, they still tell me like this, like they've never seen this before. They've never, and the process I have is unique. It's different, but I think because I'm in it, I see it all the time because I also follow other people who are in alignment with me. I don't follow the hardcore diet plans or the woman who has like 0% body fat pushing a tire saying progress not perfection, or sweat is your fat crying or stuff like that. I don't follow that. And so I think I'm a little bit biased. It's definitely becoming more prevalent. There's more awareness that there is a mindset piece to all of this, and that there is also this aspect of the relationship with ourselves and how important that is. But I do see now there's becoming lots of different camps, and there's the camp of like, it doesn't matter at all, or that weight loss, you shouldn't ever pursue weight loss. There's that message out there right now too, where it should all be about just loving your body no matter what. But I think that there is a place for intentional weight loss and loving on yourself and feeling good in your body. You don't have to pick one or the other, which I think is really important, because the women that work with that's why they come to me, because they want to lose weight. And I would be doing a complete disservice to them if I said that, it's not the right goal, or it's wrong to want to lose weight, because you get to want what you want. And if you want to lose weight, if you want to feel better in your body that way, then it is a very, very worthy goal.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm glad that we came back to that, because I was thinking that too, that we kind of started with, a discussion about, loving yourself, and the misnomer, the misconception that might mean, okay, you just accept yourself and what is right now is. And that is not what you're saying, not what I'm saying when we talk about, say, the flip at Flipping 50, which is, we've got to kick that, eat less, exercise more dogma to the curb, because that throws women's hormones under the bus. And instead, it's exercise less and it's eat more, so long as it's responsible, right? More of the good things, and you're exercising less, but when you do it, it's purposeful and you're doing the right thing. And we're not suggesting you step back and do less because you're just needing less and you're getting older and you're slipping and, you shouldn't expect to feel that good. No. It's that is the way you get more fit faster, easier when you're older. It's that if you try to exercise the way you did when you were 20 or 30, that will send you backward and potentially injure you. But we're saying absolutely you can have what you want, provided you don't try to exercise the way you used to get it. So love that we're kind of drawing parallels with those two things.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too, about doing things like, sometimes we look at this mindset piece, like you're talking about the internal work, or we talk about the that we need to think differently and all that. But the plan is also important. I want to just say that too. It's not, sometimes we say mindset's everything. I'm like, mindset's not everything, because you can have the best mindset in the world, but if you think that your Cheerios and your skim milk and your orange juice and banana in the morning is going to be the best breakfast for all day energy, like, you are going to have cravings, and you can't talk yourself into out of the physical need for your body. So both are really important. And that's one thing I coach my women on in my program, Fit and Vibrant, Live It, is there is a lot of mindset pieces. It's all about getting rid of the barriers that get in the way, because that's the quickest way forward. It's not to do more. It's not to push for harder. It's to get rid of the things that are getting in the way. And at the same time, we also need to have a simple plan, because, like I said, if you're doing the wrong things, then you can have all the best intentions, and you can have all the greatest willpower, or whatever you want to call it. But you can love yourself, but you're not going to get the results you want. So there needs to be a combination of both. Sometimes we live in a world where, well, we often live in a world, especially on social media, where everything is black or white. It's like either this or that, one or the other. But I like the world of ands, where lots of things are important.
I love that. Oh gosh, there's a good one. Everybody heard that, right? I like the world of ands. Beautiful. And just in case you missed it, basically she just said, I'll summarize, you cannot manifest that Cheerios will make you healthy. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Tanya, where is the best place for listeners to get more Tanya and of your juicy goodness?
Oh, thank you. And the best place is, if you're the podcast listener, and you probably are if you're listening to this right now, is the Fit and Vibrant You podcast. I have a podcast with a weekly show. And then above and beyond that, I have my website, Instagram, all the good stuff like that. But the podcast is where I'm the most consistent in terms of delivering trainings every single week to help women ditch the diet cycle, take control of their food, lose their weight for the last time, and feel good in their body.
So well said. All right, listeners, now it's up to you, of course. I always love to hear, what do you think I should have asked? What I missed? You can leave your question or comment below the show notes. If you don't take it directly to Tanya, the show notes will be at flipping50.com/midlife body. And I love hearing from you, by the way. We love hearing that you're listening. We love hearing your questions. Great place to add your question is in our Flipping 50 Facebook group, and that's the Flipping 50 Insiders group. It's where you can ask questions. Our community coach is in there every day checking out questions, and I go to gather what's a good question for a next Q&A episode. So there you have it. Again, show notes will be at flipping50.com/midlife body. And what are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 today.